Hello and welcome back to Brawler Bios. I'm your host, Brian, also known as Malorian, and this is a Warmachine podcast where every single time we take a caster, we break down what its rules are, a potential list, do some grading, but it's all in the viewpoint of 25 points. So whether you're playing Brawlmachine, whether you're playing 4-player Kommandant, this is going to be talking about at that 25 point level, not at, the 75 point steamroller level, just to make sure that's clear. And today, the caster that we're going to be going over is now from Minions, and it's Bloody Barnabas. So, jumping right into it, Bloody Barnabas is a Minion Gatorman Warlock. It has 6 Fury, so average. Speed 5, because it's a Gatorman, it's not fast. Strength 9, Mat 7, which is alright. Rat 3, which doesn't matter because it doesn't have a gun. It has Defense 13, Armor 17, Command 9, and then has 28 War Beast points and a good healthy 18 boxes. Now, there's also a couple of special rules on the card here at the front. First one, it's aquatic, so it can go splashy and do not care. It's also tough, so, that's a nice thing to have. I mean, it's not something to depend on, but it's a nice thing to have. And it has 2 initial attacks on the front of the card here. The first one's a simple one. It's a bite. It's half an inch range, it's P plus S 14, and it does have something additional. It has critical consume. So the way the critical consume works is that on a critical hit, if the attack hit a small base, non-warcaster, non-warlock model, the model hit is removed from play. So, okay, it's not something that always comes up, but sometimes if you're hitting something with boxes and maybe P plus S 14 won't kill it, maybe it's something like a hermit. You just hit it with this, boom, it's gone, it's consumed. So not a real rule to really be like pushing things, especially because it's only a critical effect. But hey, we'll take a critical, rare, random thing as opposed to having nothing at all. The second one here is a Bone Cleaver. It's the one that's a little bit more serious. It's range 2, P plus S 15, and it's also a magical attack. It also has its own special rules, which are a little bit better, which is Blood Boon. So the way that Blood Boon works is that once per activation, immediately after resolving an attack in which it destroyed an enemy model with this weapon, this model can cast a spell with cost 3 or less without spending Fury. Now that is really important because Fury 6 is average and it means it might be struggling to cast some of the spells you might want to do. Being able to cast one for free, that's fantastic. Now again, it does require you to go out and kill things, so that can be a little bit harder, but hey, we'll take it. That's a nice thing to have. Flipping now to the back of the card, it has a couple of other rules that are on here. The first one is going to be countercharge, which is an interesting thing to see on a caster. So when an enemy model advances and ends its movement within 6 inches of this model and in its line of sight, this model can immediately charge it. This model can use countercharge only once per round and not while engaged. So now we're kind of seeing like, oh, remember that thing on the other side that says if you kill something with the Bone Cleaver, you get a free spell? Okay, maybe a countercharge might be the way that actually triggers that. Note that if we look down to the Blood Boon rule, it's once per activation though. So that means the countercharge would not actually trigger this. Something that's easy to miss, right? You think like, oh, this is synergy in the model. It's going to make it easier for me to trigger this, but unfortunately not. Now, one of the things that can be nice, especially with what we talked about before, is maybe somebody moves up and does a hermit, and then you can countercharge, hit with the bite, maybe get a crit, and then consume it, and be like, haha, you didn't get it. But even then, if they're setting you up for a hermit, they're probably hitting with something hard, and moving Bloody Barnabas up might not be your best thing. So again, first time looking at this countercharge, you're like, oh yeah, it does all this cool stuff, but it might be more of a trap than a good thing, so really be careful about that. The next thing on here is that it's a Gatorman Warlock, which really just means that this model can have only Minion Gatorman War Beast in its battle group. A real limitation that's really unfortunate for Minions. Very flavorful, right, to have like a whole bunch of alligators or a whole bunch of pigs, but really very limiting when it comes down to it, right? If you saw this in a lot of other factions where like only half your beast can be taken by half your casters and vice versa, you can understand how limiting that would be. Finally, though, it has something that is very good, which is unyielding. So, this model gains +2 armor against melee damage rolls. So that means that stat that we talked about, its defensive stats of 13-17 are actually 13-19 when it starts being punched. And once we start thinking about that, it's like, oh, at 13-19, maybe we could be a little bit safer near the front line. Obviously not around a heavy or something like that, right? Something that'll be like, oh great, you are relatively low defense? Sure, I'll crank you that with my POW 19 sword or whatever it is. So, okay, not good there, but against infantry, sure, yeah, maybe you can wade into them and not take a lot of damage. So that's really great to have that type of a stat line. Again, might be more of a trap if you feel like, oh, I'm invincible, but, nice whenever it comes up. Now, with that in mind, let's flip to the other side, and now we're going to be looking at the spells. So, the first spell that we have on here is going to be Death March. Death March is a cost 3, range 6 upkeep spell, and it says, target friendly faction unit gains +2 mat and vengeance. And it kind of clarifies here that for Vengeance, during your maintenance phase, if one or more models in a unit with Vengeance were damaged, not destroyed, just damaged, by an enemy attack during the last round, each model in the unit can advance 3 inches and make 1 basic melee attack. It is kind of unfortunate that this has to be on a unit. Do notice that? It's not model/unit. It has to be on a full unit. However, things like Gatorman love this, right? Things love having +2 mat, right? This is really a fixture for making sure that you can hit things. And at the same time, this Vengeance is kind of like a deterrent/range extender, because your opponent will see the Vengeance unit and be like, ooh, I don't want to give you the extra movement or the extra attack. Maybe I won't shoot them. And then as well, for the odd times that you can force them to do that because maybe there's a model in their way, they have to kill one for a zone, or hell, they just want to fight you. Great, you're just going to be getting an extra bonus from that. So Death March, good spell to have, especially in minions where you are going to be having a lot of units. All right, next one here is going to be Flesh Eater. This is a cost 3, range 10, POW 13 spell, and it says, when a living enemy model is damaged by Flesh Eater, the spellcaster or a living war beast in its battle group in its control range can remove D3 damage points. This is a garbage spell. If this was cost 2, I'd be still saying it's probably a garbage spell. It'll be extremely rare whenever you'll have 3 Fury to cast this, and then being only Fury 6 means that you'll probably need a boost to hit reliably. So this is kind of still more like a 4 cost spell. And if your whole point of doing this was to heal something D3, well, the average of that is 2, the maximum is 3. Just spend the 3 to heal. So, I mean, there might be the odd time where you're like desperate and you need to try and do that last bit of damage. And, sure, it's nice you can heal something at the same time. But on average, I would just ignore the spell and pretend it's not on the card. The next one, though, the next one's really good. So the next one is Swamp Pit. It is a cost 2, range control, AoE 5 spell that's an upkeep. And it says, place a 5-inch AoE anywhere completely within the spellcaster's control range where it does not touch a model's base. That's important, we'll come back to it. The AoE is shallow water while completely within a swamp AoE. Models with amphibious cannot be targeted by range attacks. So now, this is the money spell when it comes to this caster here. And it's money because it does 2 different things. One, if you need to protect your own models, most of your Gatormen are going to be amphibious, so you just cast this spell somewhere. Note, because you can't place it where there's already a model, you have to cast it first and then move into it. And then what you can do is go and move into it, like I said, and now you're immune to range attacks. It's not that you have stealth, it's not that you have extra defense, they literally just cannot target you. So sure, they can maybe target something else and maybe like hit you with a spray, or maybe an AoE can scatter onto you, but they cannot target that model. So defensively, this is fantastic. You can also use the spell offensively, and the way that you do that is that you place this not on their models, because again, it can't be where there's already a model, but you place this in front of them. Basically, this is a massive 5-inch AoE that you can put wherever you want, and then your opponent's like, well, damn, my things aren't amphibious, so I guess going through this is just rough terrain, and I'm going to be half speed going through this. And then meanwhile, while as for other things, if you're amphibious inside of some shallow water, well, then you get concealment. That doesn't work for anybody else. So this is not like rubble that you're giving them that they'll get some sort of cover from. No, it's only bad. Now, the negative thing about this spell, even though it's a fantastic one, is one, you do have to play around it because you have to think where you want to have this before models go there. So keep that in mind. However, the other nasty thing is that it's an upkeep, and I really wish it wasn't, because since it's an upkeep, you can only cast one of these. It would be fantastic if you could be like, hey, I'm just going to use my whole thing, my whole stack, and put out 3 of these, and my entire army can't be targeted by range attacks, or I'm going to just throw water completely in front of you and lock you down. Again, that might be a little bit too powerful, but in 75 points, you normally see that you cannot get much from this. You can only protect a small amount, and you can only slow down a small amount from the opponent. Then again, we're talking about 25 points, so here, protecting one unit or some very important models from being shot, really big deal. Slowing down that critical model on their side, a very big deal at 25 points. So even though it's unfortunate that there's some play around this one and it's an upkeep, at 25, this is fantastic. All right, next one's going to be Warpath. And Warpath is a cost 3 range self control area type of spell. And it is, again, another upkeep. We have a lot of upkeeps here on Barnabas. Anyway, it says, when a friendly faction model in the spellcaster's control range destroys one or more enemy models with a melee or range attack during its activation, immediately after the attack is resolved, one war beast in the spellcaster's battle group that is in its control range can advance up to 3 inches. A war beast can advance as a result of Warpath only once per turn. So typically what you do with this is you have either some fast model, something with a gun, you kill something, and then what that does is even though the thing you killed might be some random trooper that means nothing, well, now you're adding 3 inches of threat onto one of your heavies. And if we're trying to think about this and like how it is for like me versus my opponent in terms of threat range, first of all, I'm basically minusing 5 inches of threat from them with my little swamp I can be putting in front of their heavies, assuming they don't have Pathfinder, and at the same time, increasing mine by 3 with this threat of Warpath. So I can get an 8-inch advantage over my opponent between these two spells. Again, especially in a smaller point game where it comes down to a few critical models. So this is a very nice spell to have, although again, it's situational. It kind of depends on you having these things and also being able to take advantage of them. If I'm up against somebody that's just running a bunch of heavies, I'm probably not going to get an easy Warpath. Now do note that this Warpath can be used in another way, right? I'm talking about a threat extender, but it could also be something where like your heavy charges in, destroys something, and then you're able to, once that's done, well, if it's actually that battle group model that's doing it, it can trigger its own Warpath basically on itself. So after I kill something, maybe I'm moving up another 3 inches so that now my additional attacks can be made against something else. Or maybe this is a mini hit and run type of thing where I'm going to go in, hit and kill something, trigger Warpath, and then move backwards. That's a more minor effect as opposed to the big 3-inch threat difference, but still, this is something to keep in mind and something that can be very important whenever it comes up. All right, that's all the spells. There's not a lot of them on there, but there are some goodies. And now let's go over to the feat. Now the feat is Black Tide, and Black Tide says enemy models without amphibious currently in Barnabas's control range become knocked down. So this is basically like Krios 1's feat from Menoth, just boom, I do this and you're knocked down, with the small caveat that it is only if they're not amphibious. Now, the good news here is that there's not many models out there that are amphibious, right? There is extremely very few. However, it does mean that sometimes you might go into something and your feat just won't be as good as you hoped it was going to be because they just have some random models that are amphibious. Maybe there is a mirror match of Gatormen. Maybe you're up against some pirates. There's some other random models that are amphibious. And when this comes up, it'll be a real feel bad. However, again, that'll be the rare case. And normally you just walk up, pop your feet, boom, these things are knocked down. And once you can knock down enemies, sure, it means you're automatically hitting and stuff like that in combat, or their defense 5 if you're shooting them. So that can be a lot of like fixing, right? If they have high defense, that's going to be fixing that. Just the fact that I'm hitting you reliably is nice enough as well. But this opens up some other things as well. One, maybe I just walk up, pop my feet, drop down your caster, and then shoot him to death. You know, I can build my list with a bunch of guns. I can also do this scenario-wise, right? A lot of people take solos and units in Brawlmachine and Kommandant where they cannot shake it, right? Your battle group can shake being knocked down, but a lot of other things can't. So if I do this, just locking them in place can do some other things. Maybe this is a scenario play because if they're knocked down, well, now they can't be effectively running into contest or even moving up to contest. One of the things I like to do with this is if I can, you know, go up and feat and knock things down, then great. I can kind of move things up to being just outside of their attack range. And now no matter what they sacrifice, they can't attack me. And because they can't just walk past me, they're kind of stuck. Now, here's the other problem with this though, is that you are kind of limited in how far you can apply this. This is not one of those feats that you can pop and then charge. This is something more where you can only walk up and do this. So this is actually another time though where counter charge might help you apply this. In that turn where just before your feat, they move up something random and you're like, you know what? I need to have this extra range from my feet next turn. I'm going to countercharge so that my normal walk up 5, then pop my feet out 12 is now countercharge plus the 5 plus the 12. So that's where countercharge might help you more than normally, is to actually pop this. But yeah, it's definitely a powerful feat, as long as it's not something that's going to be ignored by either amphibious or just plainly things that can't be knocked down. All right, so that's everything that we have here on the card for Bloody Barnabas. Now, let's go in here and talk about a list. I think one of the first type of the list you can be looking at is a gun list. There is a lot of things in minions, not really so much in the battle group, but in units. You can be taking a lot of different units that have guns and can be doing nasty things out there, and I think you'll be having a lot of fun with that. I'm not going to be talking about that type of a list though, because I find it kind of boring, right? Walking up, popping feet, take whatever guns you want, that's simple. I don't even need to build that for you, because it's literally put in caster, put in something with gun, repeat till you're out of points, you're done. So I decided to go a little bit different, and I'm going to be building a list that's more so on the flavor and going with the actual Gatorman. So because of that, I am going to be going with the Blind Water Congregation. I'm going to be having Bloody Barnabas, obviously, as my caster. And then for my battle group, I'm going to be taking the good old Black Hide Wrestler. It's pretty much a must, really. You know, you get your +3 strength from rage from wherever you need it. It's just a good general beater to have. Then, because I still have points left, I'm going to be also taking a Swamp Horror. The two of these work together very well because I mean, the Black Hide would love to be having a reach being put onto it. And then on the other side here, I mean, the Swamp Horror loves getting rage put onto it. So they're like best friends and they work together very well. Now, other than that, because we are talking about Gatormen, of course, I'm going to be putting in a Gatorman posse. They're even better in this theme. That's going with the flavor. I really want it. And I guess I might as well throw this now too. For my free requisition point, I decided to take the Totem Hunter. As you build this, there's not going to be many solos. Again, you could build it to have lots of solos, but in mine, it was a little bit light. So you always want to make sure that you have something that can go out there and score. Plus, something that, since I'm looking at this so far, I don't have a lot of things to proc that warpath. I want something that's a little bit faster, a little bit more deadlier, that can proc that first thing. So the Totem Hunter is perfect for that. It's a good stealthy model that can hold a flag if I need. It can zip out and kill something, and then proc that warpath, go somewhere else, be safe. It's a great model to be taking for free. Then, to kind of help support things, I also took the Primal Archon. So I like the Primal Archon because it kind of adds a little bit more for that counter charge. So now you'll have a counter charge from Barnabas and a counter charge from the Primal Archon. Sure, the Primal Archon one is a little bit more scary because if it hits, it knocks you down. But I find it's just a nice support piece for you to be using along the way, where you can be like, look, my posse is in some water, and if you try and shoot them, but you just can't. And if you charge in, I can leave open something so that I can charge through with my Primal Archon and do some damage to you. So, you know, those 8 points could be something else if you don't like that flavor, but I like having in the multiple threats of counter charge just to kind of make things more difficult for my opponent. Finally, the last thing I had in here is I had 3 points, so I put in Quack, Slick Spine, and Gub. And the reason why I like them is their magic abilities, where, sure, the healing and stuff like that, that's cool. You know, you could be doing stuff like Mudfoot and taking away Pathfinder. So if you go and put out some water and they're like, haha, we have Pathfinder, well, you can be doing this and taking it away. So that's a nice little thing there. But more importantly, I love Enliven. The ability to say, hey, you hit my war beast, it'll then walk away. And sure, I might take a hit from that, but at least I'll be alive. And with these beasts and with like Fury, yeah, we're probably good, or sorry, Rage, we're going to be taking you out in return. So that's what I'm going to be having for my list. Again, that's kind of the more themey one for like what they'd be like in the fluff. If you want to go a little bit more competitive, you can be building a gun line type thing. There's other ways you can be building Barnabas. But now that we're done talking about this in the list, let's get into the grading. This is where we're going to be going over some key factors for any type of caster and giving it a letter grade. Now, the first one we're going to be talking about is what Bloody Barnabas has for answers. So if my opponent has some sort of skew on the other side, something that really threatens me and asks a question that if I can't deal with this, I'll lose the game, do I have answers for it? And there's some pretty good ones here. However, it's kind of all going in one way. I have my feet, so if you have really high defense, I can knock you down and just take that away. All right, that's easy. So that's that's an A+ solution to having high defense. I also have Death March, which adds +2 mat, which also helps deal with high defense. So it kind of is like a win more because it's all in the same location. I wish this was like a +2 damage spell. That'd be really nice to be in a different area. But hey, if I want to have something to answer some of the high def and then hold on to my feet, sure, I guess there's something. But really, these are all answers in the same way. Luckily, we still have something else that we answer, and that's going to be guns, right? If we're coming to this and our opponent has really good guns, maybe they're hoping to shoot my stuff down, whatever it is, well, I just go out there and I put out that swamp pit, put my models inside it, and they just can't shoot me. So that is another very, very strong answer I have to something that my opponent might be trying to do. So overall, you know, I don't have that strength things. If something has armor or lots of magic, I can't answer everything. But if they're based on guns or high defense, I have very strong answers to that. So I'm leaning in this one here to being either a B or a B+, kind of like in that area there. This is a good caster with good answers. Not answers for everything, but you know, that's why we're kind of in that B area. All right, next, we're going to be talking about questions. So what does Bloody Barnabas have that says, look, you have to answer this, otherwise you're in a lot of trouble? And I think, again, the first thing we have to bring up is that feat. You know, like I said, this feat is something that your opponent has to figure out how to deal with. If I know that, man, my caster might just be knocked down and then you can just shoot me, or maybe you're going to knock down my troops and then they're going to be able to get the alpha on me because I'll have to shake this, or maybe I can't shake with my other things. You know, maybe the whole thing here also of how do I answer this threat, right? If you're able to put this pit in front of me and slow me down and get the alpha that way, you might not even need the feat to get the alpha. Or maybe you're using Warpath, and like for my little models, do I just not use some of my weaker models for fear that you'll kill them and trigger Warpath? Am I better off like hiding my solos and just not using them just so that you don't get the alpha? And then you're probably getting the alpha anyway from those other things? Those are some real questions that this caster is asking you. I don't think there's really much anything else that's coming on here. Again, most of the other things are kind of like answers, but yeah, these are some very strong questions. Again, not really overly powerful ones, but enough that's very significant. So whereas the other one was like a B, I was thinking about a B plus, this one I'd be putting as a B plus. I really like the questions that Bloody Barnabas asks. All right, next one, let's talk about grading the personal output. It is near the end of the game. You need to take out this heavy to win. Can Barnabas do it? And the answer is probably not. I mean, sure, we had some things on the card there where it has unyielding, it has some little bit higher armor, it has counter charge, it has the blood boon where if I kill something, I get a free spell, but like I said, this is kind of more trying to like pick on weaker infantry. It can't really deal with anything serious. So I'm going to put this one down as a C, and I might not even go and say like this is even like a C minus. I don't know. This is not a very good one. You're not taking Bloody Barnabas because you're out there doing lots of work with it. It's mainly trying to use these other things to support its actual grouping. Although, like I said, if you're being swamped by little infantry, sure, Bloody Barnabas will get in there. But if you're needing it to kill the enemy caster, needing to get an enemy heavy killed, yeah, that's not something Barnabas is going to do for you. So we'll put that one down as a C. Why not? We won't go all the way down to a C minus, just a C. All right, next one here will be a grade for a new player. So if I had a new player coming into my meta and they're like, hey, Brian, I'm going to be starting to play in your Brawlmachine League, your Kommandant games, and I'm going to be bringing Bloody Barnabas. Do I think this is a good thing for them to be starting with? I don't. I don't think this is a good one for them to be using. And I feel that because there's a lot of things on here that are traps or tricky. So like I said, the things were like, ooh, I'm going to countercharge and do all this stuff with Bloody Barnabas, when really that's how you lose games. One of the most powerful things on the card here is going to be, like I said, either the swamp pit that you have to be very careful in how you place it because you're placing it around models and need to do your activations in order, or even a warpath where I need to be doing something else to then be triggering this after. You know, that's something that you need to have the foresight to do properly, and a new player might either not understand it and not get the value, or even worse, do it incorrectly and kind of learn the game the wrong way. I also kind of feel too that a feat like this one here where it knocks things down is something that is going to be not overly fun to the player. They're probably going to be trying to get too aggressive and getting up there just so they can try and knock things down, again trying to get themselves killed really. And then in those times where they're like, oh, I thought I just knocked everything down, but I didn't realize you have anti-knockdown tech or you're amphibious. Oh no, like there's a lot of potential feel bads that are almost like traps within this for a new player. So I don't feel this is where I'd want to be putting them. So again, I think I'm going to be putting this one more as like a C minus. It's not awful. They can get some stuff from it. I don't think it's a D. Maybe it's like a D plus, but I'm going to be putting this one down as a C minus. So something I would not no, I'm going to go down. I'm going to go for D plus. It's not the worst awful thing, but it's damn close. So D plus, would not recommend this for new players. However, next grade, experienced players. I now have a player coming in saying, Brian, I'm coming to your Brawlmachine tournament and I'm going to win with Bloody Barnabas. How successful do I think they can be? I think they can be very successful. On one hand, they can be doing that shooting type thing, like I said, which would be very potent as an assassination play. Or if they're very wise in the way that they're using that swamp pit and the warpath, they can be really working those alphas and hitting hard with a powerful battle group, getting the alpha, knocking things down so that they can't really even, countercharge with their units after. Like this can be very powerful. So for that there, I'm going to be putting this one up as... It's not quite an A. It's not going to be probably like, like something that's going to be dominating. If there were more pieces in here in the faction that were stronger guns that are boostable for the battle group, I think I might be leaning more towards that, but we're not at that level. I'm going to say a B plus. Very strong. I think it's a good option. I wouldn't be like, well, I guess you're winning, but I would not be surprised if they did extremely well in the tournament. And so there you go. That's everything you need to know about Bloody Barnabas. But as we come to a close here, I want to be hearing from you. I want to know, do you agree with my gradings? Do you agree with the way that I said you can build this list? Is there something missed? Please let me know. Otherwise, I aim to try and do these every 2 weeks. Again, things have been a little bit wonky lately, but it's the way it goes. But yeah, plan to hear these every 2 weeks, and I'll see you next time. Bye.